Welcome to episode 2 of the StartupREI podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. This podcast is teaching startup real estate investors, not just investing, but all other aspects of real estate investing, including contracting, insurance, sales, personal finance. This is a great show. This time around, we are interviewing Mr. Kevin Miller, who is an ex-software salesman turned investor. Well, he was an investor almost his entire life, but now that he's retired, he's taking investing full time. And in this episode, you are going to be, you're going to be learning about the importance of relationship building and all the time and effort that it takes to establish those relationships, because that's what this industry is all about. And he's going to be talking about out-of-state investing, and there's going to be a lot of great nuggets in this show. So again, thank you so much for joining. Like, comment, subscribe. Criticism is highly welcome since this is a brand new show. And yeah, let's get this show on the road. Thanks. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the second special edition meetup, also our second episode of the StartupREI podcast. Super excited to have everybody here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Josh, for organizing everything and setting all this up. You're welcome. Matter of fact, my co-host Josh and our great, lovely guest Kevin, who's been with us in the meetups for.
My wife's lovely. I'm just handsome.
Accurate. Handsome.
You're rugged. We'll go rugged.
Rugged, yeah. with that new beard. He's been with us since the very beginning of the meetups, constantly coming, sharing his wealth of knowledge, which we decided to turn this into a podcast and have everybody be able to experience that same knowledge together and record it. So this will be recorded. We will, of course, set it on a podcast. It's going to be on YouTube. It'll be on our thing once we actually launch, but we've done a few episodes already. Our introduction, first episode, second episode, we're going to do a few episodes and then we're going to get it out there. So again, thanks everybody.
We kind of want to get like a backlog of episodes before we start releasing it, so we're not releasing like one and then 3 months later another one and then 3 days and then 3 months. We're kind of getting a good consistency at the beginning so we can kind of release them in a good order to kind of keep people coming back for more. It's a consistency thing. That's what we're going for. So
it's also,
Kevin is one of our earlier ones that's going to be on the backlog until we get it going, but he's going to definitely be out there.
Yeah, after this let's do like every week or something. We'll figure it out. Your Stonehenge is falling apart.
Oh well.
With that
the facade is broken.
With that said, let's get started. So Kevin, thank you for doing this. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Kevin Miller. I live in Simi Valley, married to a wonderful wife. She's here on the call. 30 years this year.
Congratulations.
I'm 60. I will be 60. I am 60 years old. I'm turning 61 this year. So I'll give you just a brief highlights. I grew up in Van Nuys. I have one brother. He's 7.5 years younger, so I was raised like a single kid basically most of the time. And got work ethic pretty early. At 13, I wanted to be able to get into the local swim school for free because my parents wouldn't pay for it all the time. They said, well, if you want to come and clean out the bathrooms, you can do it. So I did. And that gave me free entrance. And then later that summer, they said they taught me how to clean the pools, and I ended up having a job. So I cleaned 2 pools, scrubbed out the bathrooms, and that turned into junior high school and high school. I learned how to teach swimming. I did lifeguarding. I did all that. And I was able to work in 3.5 months and make as much money as all my other friends did working all year long. So I didn't have to work during the school year. I just worked during the summer. And, being a lifeguard and teaching swimming isn't that hard. But that's where I got the work ethic. I started there. And I spent the first about 10 years of my life working in management in hotels and restaurants. I opened up a small and then a very large hotel as part of the beginning team. And then I also opened up a good sized restaurant. So as part of, learned how to do a lot of problem solving and working many different situations all at once. That situation didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Some things changed. But while that was going on, I had in the back of my mind, and this wasn't from my parents or anybody else, it was just in my situation. At 21, I bought I was living in a condo, and I bought a second condo and was so excited because it cash flowed $60 a month. Which, hey, that was great in, 1982 was where it was. But I hawked everything and then borrowed money from other people to get that done. And I can't tell you right now, I don't have what the actual impetus to that was, other than I knew if I was going to make it, I had to do something of my own. And the opportunity was there, and I did it.
Now, this isn't that property that you bought in, where is that, south from here?
Huntington Beach, I think. Was that right?
No, it's a different property.
Oh,
okay.
This was in Port Hueneme.
Oh, okay.
Oxnard. I had the one I lived in Oxnard and the rental one in Port Hueneme.
Okay.
And anyway, I changed careers. Hotels and restaurants, nights and weekends were killing me. They destroyed my first marriage. And then I went into the car business and learned about sales and learned I was good at sales, and spent about 6.5, 7 years doing that. Moved up very quickly, got into the finance office where you sell the loans to the bank, and you also sell, client stuff as well. And that's where I met my wife. Her brother owned the dealership I was working at, and she came to work there. And we got married and blended our families. And the car business was also nights and weekends. Wasn't neither one of the careers I'd been working. Went to college for a hotel restaurant, worked in the car business. None of it was working for families. So through a long story that I won't go into, got out of the car business from the retail side of it, but ended up working for a large software supplier to the car business. Worked there for 26 years and had a phenomenal time. I was a top producer there 16 years out of the 26, and the other years I did fairly well in it as well. Earned all kinds of trips and accolades. And about 5 years ago, they bought a company that had overlapping job descriptions, titles, territories, that sort of thing. And they gave about 70 of us the opportunity of a golden parachute if we wanted to go. And we just happened to be the guys that were on the higher pay plans, older, and all that. But it was a great opportunity. It made me it made it so I had in my mind about 5 or 6 more years to go to retirement. But I had a choice, and it was, do we live this lifestyle? Because we could have lived a decent lifestyle as it was. We'd done very well for ourselves. At that time, we had I had inherited the property you guys were talking about in Huntington Beach. My brother and I share that property, and we manage it ourselves and maintain it ourselves. So anyway, my choice was, what do I do? Do I retire and just live life okay, or is there more? And at the time, there was like, I absolutely have to do more. I'm refired, not retired. So at that time,
how long ago was that?
That was 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So I spent about 3 years working a network marketing business. I still work that business a little bit, but I don't have the passion for it like I do for real estate. And I've always, like I said, back at 21, I got going in real estate. And I started investigating real estate again. And in my mind, I had the mindset that I couldn't invest here in California. I didn't
Okay.
have enough money to buy more rentals, because I had my mind the little box of, well, let me buy another house like I have down in Huntington Beach. And well, no, I don't have $500,000 to go set into a property and do what I need to do for that. And can it turn a profit? And no, it wouldn't turn the right profit. And all the numbers and all the things you play with. And it took a while for me to figure it out that maybe there's another way. And that, in the process of my building the network marketing business, I learned about meetup groups, and being on Meetup is where I found out about your group. And at your first meeting, you talked about Bigger Pockets. And
Yeah.
I'd not heard a word about Bigger Pockets. Well, I jumped into Bigger Pockets, and
You
within,
jumped into that, like you dove in. You didn't just jump in.
yeah, I went to the deep end.
Deeper than the deep, and I was a
Yeah. I went to all the way to buying the books, starting analyzing deals, got a pro membership right away. So my practice of learning was, I did 5 to 10 deals off of their marketplace. I researched and I figured, okay, what's the best thing I can start with? Instead of just looking at the whole country and 5 different strategies, what strategy would make sense with what I want to do? And David Green's Burr strategy made sense to me. And then his out-of-state strategy made sense because I figured I couldn't do it here well. So I started doing research, and I'm really good at research. And I went and found demographics and came up with 5 or 6 different cities that seemed to look like they met the criteria that everyone, all the experts say are the right criteria. And I started picking up the phone. I'm a sales guy. I use the phone all the time. So I picked up the phone and I started looking for David's core 4. You know,
I I want to like go through all of this. I want to kind of take everything and the questions that I sent you, kind of split all of this up.
yeah,
So what I'd like to do is let's rewind a
yeah,
little bit, and I'll ask you I'll ask some questions.
sure,
But
go
what
ahead.
I also wanted to add, and I didn't say this during the intro, if anybody does have questions, you can open up the toolbar of Zoom. On the bottom there's a little chat button, and then you can hit the chat, and then to everyone is, I would see it, or if you have something personal to say to either me or Josh or even Kevin, you can switch the person that you're talking to. So if anybody has any questions that they'd like answered, we tend to do that at the end. So the whole the cool thing about this different interview style. All right, so you talked about almost everything, but now is where we're going to get into the details.
we're gonna peel back the layers of Kevin Miller. That's what we're doing here.
Where have I heard that before? Let's jump to the beginning. How and why, or why did you choose hotels?
So I was in hotel restaurant. I was very good. One of my parents were both very good cooks.
Okay.
As
are you.
Yeah.
and we know that.
My dad
That's true.
My dad took cooking classes for all forms. My mother was a great entertainer and was a great cook, and both my grandparents were great. And it became a hobby of mine as well. But I realized early on that it was better to manage chefs than it was to be one.
Okay.
I again, real good at research. My dad taught me, okay, you like this. This was in elementary school. My dad had me start searching what I liked, because if it interested me, where do I want to go to school? And then by the time I got to 9th grade, I'd identified, all right, I want to go to hotel restaurant management school. And that's what I want to do. So in 9th grade, we went and interviewed the dean at the school at Cal Poly Pomona of hotel restaurant management.
God,
Wow.
in 9th grade, I think I was trying to get through algebra and trying to get Nicole to go out with me. So we got a little bit of difference there.
I was collecting Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
So
well, I was doing those things too. It was just my dad was one of those guys that said, hey, you got to plan your life out, right? So
that's awesome. That's
smart man.
That's very smart, man. Good head on your shoulders, and clearly passed that on to you.
So I got into Cal Poly, and the requirement there is that you work in the industry. And while I was living in the dorms and going to school out there in Pomona, I also was the assistant manager of a restaurant for a year. And that really wasn't what it was. That was a title. I was chief cook and bottle washer is what I was. And it was a horrible job. But
We all
anyway,
got to start somewhere.
yeah, you do. And then I went to work for Hilton Hotels, and that's where I spent about 10 years working for Hilton.
Okay.
So I was on the opening team of the LAX Hilton. I was one of the first 6 people employed there. I was the executive assistant of the rooms division. And when I started, the day I started, we had 1 room. And a year later, we had 1,400 rooms, and they were all sold out for the Olympics.
Wow. That's awesome.
That was a really wonderful opportunity. So that's where I loved hotel. I still love the hotel restaurant business. I ran some restaurants. Obviously I ran hotels for 10 years. I love that. It's not a good environment for families. For me.
Okay. That's interesting. You have mentioned before about wanting to buy, a smaller hotel and manage it. So
yeah,
I guess you still have that passion in it.
Yeah. Asset management of that kind. I mean, and right now, speaking in real estate, think of all the hotels that are going under because of the lockdown. And what could they be converted into?
Yeah. Or you get them at a cheaper price.
Exactly.
Probably a good opportunity. You talked about how you bought your first condo when you were 21.
Yep. With $6,000.
Don't tell us the price.
Times.
Okay.
It was
good old times.
It was $60,000, but it only took $6,000, 10% down.
Don't tell us the price. That hurts. That hurts deep inside. I just put 40 something
on the water, overlooking the beach.
This was the Port Hueneme one, right?
Yeah. 2 bedrooms, 2-story, about 1,100 square feet.
How long did you rent? How long did you rent that for before you let it go?
Well, I ended up going through a divorce a year and a half later. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, that at that age, that young.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I
married early and finished that one early too.
Cheers.
You guys can enjoy that.
Did you keep the Port Hueneme one, and did you rent that one out, or did you just wind up selling that one?
It's a bad story. I gave them both away. To avoid support.
Gotcha.
You went you were going on about the software salesman stuff, and I kind of want to go back to that because one of the topics about today is how has your skills in that industry helped you with real estate. So we're going to get some pretty good juicy info from Kevin.
So on that specifically, I was a territory rep. I sold computer hardware and software to car dealerships, new car dealerships.
This was as a software salesman, but
hardware and software.
Hardware and software. But before that, you were in the actual dealership.
For 7 years. Yep.
And you were selling cars, or was it?
I did that for about 2 years, crazy. And the rest of the time I was in the F&I office.
Which is the
what's F&I?
Finance office, finance and insurance.
Finance.
That's where that's where they go to do all the paperwork. And then that guy also sells your deal to the bank.
Is that like the equivalent of an underwriter in the mortgage?
It's just like the mortgage industry. Yep, just like a broker.
Cool.
I brokered the deal.
Cool.
It taught me a whole lot about this side of the business.
We're gonna get into that. So what made you? And I know we answered that question. It was going to be what made you get focused into real estate, but you said after you retired early, one of Josh's fire principles, you decided to not retire. You decided to get boots on the ground.
Rehire or refired.
I
like that.
This may sound a little optimistic for some, but I believe that we can live a lot longer than we should be.
Sure. Yeah. I do recall you saying that.
60, I'm halfway.
You're only 60.
Yeah.
You're only 60.
The Bible says 120 years, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of folks that get up into the 90s and hundreds and all that. So, hey, at 60, if I have finances, time, and wisdom, man, what could I accomplish in the next 30 years?
You don't have the 8 to 10 hours a day of commuting to work, putting 8 hours into a job that you you could love, but it's still not, it's not going to get you to where you want to be. So
It's working for
yeah,
somebody else instead of working for yourself,
Right.
exactly.
So I created a vision for myself in the real estate business, and it may sound a little familiar to you two guys because you've heard a version of it, but my vision is that my real estate investments are wildly profitable, socially positive, and they bring me joy.
What do you mean by socially positive?
That the communities I'm involved with, I'm not a slumlord. I'm actually bringing value to the communities that the properties, the assets that I have are there for this, that my tenants I actually serve them. They don't serve me.
Yeah, you care. You're not a slumlord. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I want the community to be better for me being involved with it.
That's great.
That's awesome.
That's really admirable. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So when I looked at real estate, I wanted to find a way to bring that, because that was something I could get passionate about.
Okay.
And that's where then you talked about working, your 8, 10, 12 hours. When I got involved in real estate, that's not quite 10 hours, but I would easily do, 6 to 8 hours of research a day. I'd make, hundreds of phone calls.
All right.
Until I found out what I needed. So I took that list of 6 or 7 cities and dialed it down to 2 that I felt I could do business in.
I'm going to get this one. I'm jumping. There's an important thing that you said that we glossed over that I think is really, really cool that you did hundreds of phone calls. That's not something that you hear very often unless you get that mindset, and you have to be able to focus your mindset to get to the point where you're able to just make those hundreds of phone calls. I'm struggling here trying to find a dentist. Like I made 3 phone calls. I'm like, oh my God, that's enough. Like, can I just email them or can I text them? Like, it's just generations, I guess. But it's like the fact that you were able to do hundreds of phone calls. Granted, it's your background is in sales, so you have kind of the born and bred and raised that way to do the calls. But I'm just, every time I hear, because I've heard that before, it's just like, I think I'm like, damn, like, could I do 100 phone calls today? Probably not. And I was in a
But
phone
you don't go into
job.
it thinking I'm going to make 100 calls today. You go into it.
See, there you go. Mindset. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. You got the right mindset. You're
I'm
not thinking about
somebody
100.
who's going to light up with excitement and talk about things and share information with me that is going to make me feel like I could trust them to be a business partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
A vendor, because frankly, when we're talking about investing your money in a different state, you could easily get anxious and turned off by all the stories and what is possible. Property manager takes your money, doesn't do this, contractors, don't do any work, and all the stories you could hear.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to. I wanted to try to avoid that. I built my sales career on relationships, and I wanted to build this business on the same thing. So how do you get to know people? You talk to them on the phone.
And if it takes 100 phone calls, that's what it takes.
And then I went out there.
Did.
I met you guys in what, June?
June, yeah. We're actually 11 months almost to the day, I think, since we met.
Yeah, so in June, I started the process with the bigger pockets and the research and the calling. And by October, I was ready to go out there, and I did. Went out there, went to Detroit and went to Cleveland. And in the first visit that I went there, I saw 15 people in 2.5 days in Detroit that I thought were potential vendors that I'd set, that I had identified through all those phone calls, that they've got the reviews, they're on Angie's List and Yelp and all that. And they came across real well over the phone. They hit the criteria. And it turned out, of those 15 people, only 3 of them stuck. So
you found these people on, like you just said, Angie's List or Yelp or Google searching. You would just put their number inside of an Excel sheet and then start calling one by one?
No. So I found people through multiple different sources. And the reason it became hundreds of phone calls, and I'll give you an example. I found my now property manager guy. I found him through a Bigger Pockets blog, and then a chain, and then there was a person that put down on that they had just bought their first property in Detroit. And so I connected and said, hey, congratulations. If you're open to talk about that, I'd like to get some, run some things by that with you. And that person, her name was Chen. She was so open and so exciting. She gave me 3 different people to speak to. 2 of them are now real close. I've seen them both times I've been out there. And, one's an investor just like I am. And the other is now my property manager guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it came out of this person I talked to, and I went to that person. It's that the 15th touch, you find someone that's really, really good.
Yeah, and multiple phone calls and all of that. You just got to find out how many degrees can you see Kevin Bacon from that relationship.
Well, it's also, you back up all the research with, you go out there and there's nothing that passes sitting down at a table and talking.
Right. Having a cup of coffee. It's great. How did what skills would you say were most, your core skills would you say helped you the most that you learned from your software sales or your auto sales position that have helped you in real estate?
Persistence, but persistence with a twist. So I learned early on, the sales I was involved in was long-term sales. So it would take me anywhere from 6 months to 2 years of calling on a customer to secure a deal.
Jeez.
But it typically was then a signed 5-year deal. Yeah. And it was very, the deals were upwards of, $3 million, $10 million is what you sold. Some of them were a lot less, but
these are the software stuff.
Yeah, because they sign up for the agreement to do all their business through you, and then you manage that account. But it takes a while to get there. So I learned, you have to visit these dealerships 2 times a month, 3 times a month, and if they get into a sales cycle, you're there every week. Well, you're not making a sale.
Yeah.
Every time you visit. So how do you reward yourself? So I learned to be persistent, but I set myself a mental win for every contact that I had, whether it was a phone call or a visit, that I would have somebody say something, give me something, open up to something, receive something. And that to me was as good and as powerful as a sale. So that same thing I translated to this pursuit of a team in real estate in Detroit and Cleveland. So my phone calls were based on, if I could find somebody that is going to, first of all, believe it or not, it's return their call.
I believe it. Yeah.
Or return an email, something like that. And then someone that is positive and not negative about what's going on. You wouldn't believe how many people are like, you want to invest here now? Why do we want to do that? These are property managers. And it's like, okay, thank you.
And that's not even city specific. I've also tried, my own, and it's like, why would you, or what made you think about this? Oh, it's way too, and it's like, oh, come on. Or like you said, they don't answer the phone. They don't return your call. Oh, absolutely. This is great. Shoot me an email and I'll get you all this information. Crickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of letting that get me angry, frustrated, or whatever, I was able to turn that into, okay, today I'm going to make whatever number of calls I need to get this kind of response in this category. And I had the categories down, real estate agent, wholesaler, property manager, contractor, insurance. The hard one was, lenders. And then, title people, inspectors, and all that stuff, attorneys.
How, I want to kind of make it easy even for me. So are you taking all this information and you're putting it in an Excel sheet? Or
Yeah.
Okay. And like a notes column where you're just typing last contact and then this is what we spoke about until it, of course, flourishes into a relationship.
I didn't get that granular. I actually didn't do a spreadsheet. I just used a piece. I still keep a little notepad.
Pen and paper.
Yeah. Imagine a legal pad. And then
Sure.
I just keep it going. And then I had one for Detroit and I had one for Cleveland.
Okay.
And I just kept on narrowing down and narrowing down and narrowing down until I was ready to do a visit. I was always working towards the visit. And then on the visit, I started talking about investing and saw where they were.
So yeah, I tell people that it takes approximately 6 months to a year from somebody who kind of has, I mean, you already had that drive. You already had that knowledge of real estate on the back of your mind. Like you said, you had inherited that property. I tell people that it takes a good 6 months to a year of like almost college level, nonstop listening to podcasts, reading, books, watching YouTube, to fully understand what you're even trying to accomplish.
Yeah, for a while, I really didn't know.
Yeah,
I would argue that it could be even longer than a year. I mean, I've been in this for just over a year, and I'm still learning stuff. Like today alone, I talked with people. I was like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, you're always learning.
Like I know a lot. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, Victor, one of the questions you sent me, the question was, what would you tell your past self?
We'll get to that at the end.
but I'll answer it right here. I tell myself to take action quicker.
Okay.
June to October was too long. I could have really, if I'd done what I know now, I could have by October had already purchased a property.
Pull the trigger.
And it was the visit in October, by the way, that led to me buying a property, and it actually closed escrow in December.
Cool.
Right.
But if I had really followed with what I was doing, I believe I could have had the property by September, October.
Now, this is coming from somebody who, like I said, who already knew real estate, who already understood real estate. You got started at the age of 13, making money. Somebody who, their entire life it's been working for the man, or in any case, but it just had never didn't understand, but like had nowhere to start.
I hadn't been a business owner. I'd worked with business owners, but I'd never actually been the entrepreneur, and that was a challenge. It was who here I am going to invest my money, hard-earned money, and I don't have a ton of it, and it's going to be out of state, and what am I going to do, and what's the worst thing that could happen, right?
Persistence.
So that was in the back of my mind as I'm making these calls and developing the relationships. And is this the kind of guy I can? So if that's the kind of guy that's going to be that vendor, what kind of systems do I have to have in place to make sure it's being done? Well, one of those systems was I had to have other partners in the area that were looking over at what these guys are doing. So my realtor can watch what the property manager's doing. My inspector, all of them are not related. They're separate businesses. He can go take pictures and see what's going on in the places that are going on, because I can't. Those are the kind of things that, what's that?
Does David Green mention that in his book, to have them cross-reference each other? I don't think I remember reading that.
No, it was it's in my own mind.
You should quote that and write that in a book somewhere.
It's going to be in Kevin Miller's book. How to really invest in
out-of-state, long-distance investing.
Hundreds of phone calls, but don't plan on doing hundreds of phone calls, but you'll get to 100 phone calls.
Yeah, you'll just get there.
Right. You don't plan on it. You just pick up the phone and call.
Well, and you guys have listened to Andrew Cushman's story on Bigger Pockets, right? The syndicator, he's got 1,800 units under his belt. His jump into real estate was he was going into the foreclosures market and buying and flipping them. He made 1,400. Now here's a guy who does spreadsheets and keeps numbers of exactly what's done. He's got the spreadsheet. He did over 1,400 phone calls with a no before he actually got the first yes.
1,400.
That's persistence.
That is persistent.
He got told no. And he says admittedly it's because he had to learn how to talk to people. Well, guess what? I'd spent the last 30 years talking to people.
So that's a great skill that you've clearly developed, is picking up the phone and making phone calls. Is there any advice you'd give to somebody who's very hesitant about picking up the phone? And I know just do it is what you always hear, and if that's what you have to say, I totally get it. But like, even for myself, I'm very hesitant of just picking up the phone, because even before the call, I have 47 things lined up that I'm going to talk about, which, as we all know, never goes as planned. You never talk about any of the things that you think you're going to talk about unless you have it written down. So
And I
is
think
there...
this is a message to like the millennials and the Gen Zs, because as a millennial / Gen X kind of thing, we don't do phone call.
What's a phone?
We do email, we do text message, we do Zoom, you know, where we can actually like lookish face to face. So, you know, like an actual talking on the phone, like I like to talk, I like to ramble, but I hate talking on the phone. Like I'm not a phone guy. I like to see the person I'm talking to. So
I have gotten to a point where, like, whether it was a business card or it's like a Yelp thing, where I'm about to text them and I think there's like an icon for like connect with us, and I'm thinking I'm gonna push it and it's gonna be like an email, but it automatically enters the phone number. I remember this happening to me one time, and like I'll immediately hang up. Like I don't want to talk to you. That's not what I wanted.
It's so funny though.
I'll tell you, the first thing is, it's not about you. The first thing you got to do, and you know, I'm not generalizing here, but the older you get, the less things are all about you. The younger I was, and I'll say that, you know, most millennials, and especially even younger, you tend to see things only from your perspective.
Sure, yeah.
So the first thing I do when I'm getting onto a call is I'm trying to put myself in the position of the person I'm calling to. While I'm looking for information, this is another thing I learned in sales. You don't get, so when you're doing sales, you don't just ask a person for the sale, right? You don't start off by doing that. You have to give information. You have to give a little bit more here. You have to give, it's called, and there's a term for it, it's called pace, lead. But you imagine if I'm going to get $1 back, I have to invest something to get the $1 back. So I'm going to give a little information. I'm going to add something here, add something there. So when I go into a conversation, I'm looking to find out from that person's perspective. I don't want to rip their day. I don't want to waste their time, but I want to bring something of value to them too. Because if they become a business partner, I take that term seriously, a partner. It's not good for me if I'm the winner only in this business transaction. They have to make money, and it has to be efficient for them too, and enjoyable at the same time as I make money, and it's efficient and enjoyable for me. That's a win-win. So I start that relationship that way in the phone call. And I get out of, what is it about me? What is it about going here? I don't like it's, hey, look, I'm looking for information. So I'm going to find out, what's the weather like out there? What's going on here? I do a little bit of small talk if they're open to it. I learned, you know, I'm a foodie. And when I went out there, I haven't had a bad meal yet in Detroit. Because what's the one thing all those people like to talk about? Hey, we got some great food out here. And they'll talk, where do I go here? What do I do there? I'm coming out. This is that. What's going on here? And then as you're doing research, you're learning more and more about stuff. So you're asking questions that are relevant to what's going on there that may not be specifically in the area they deal with. So I may talk to a contractor about what rents are like, or what the tenant base is like in certain neighborhoods. That's not his expertise. But guess what? He's in those neighborhoods every day.
And I'd like to redrive that point in. You know, our podcast is to teach people about real estate. And an important thing that I think people can take away from this episode is real estate. Yes, it's about buying property, selling properties, the numbers, but it's also a people business. It's a relationship building business. And, you know, when I first got into the scene, I didn't really think that way. I thought, oh, you know, I can kind of sit behind the scenes and just, you know, money go, money come, money blah, blah, blah. But then I started reading, you know, you actually go to a local meetup group, which is how I met you guys. And, you know, I started reading more books and a lot more podcasts and a lot more stuff. And I'm learning more and more that, hey, it's a people business as well. And, you know, you're talking about, you know, talking to people on the phone, even though our generation hates talking on the phone, it is the best way to develop a relationship and build a rapport with somebody is to talk to them on the phone. The best is sitting with them face-to-face, person to person. You can pick up on body language and cues, but talking to them on the phone is a close second, you know, as opposed to just emailing back and forth. You really don't build the rapport that way. So I think a good point for the people who are learning to get into real estate is you're gonna have to work on your people skills. It's just an important part of the deal.
And you can do it in the meetup.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Perfect
a
place to do
really
it.
good like point to start with is if you can find your local REIA meetup and just go, and you don't have to really talk to anybody the first time you're there, but just go there, just get out, make it there, and people will approach you and talk to you. And if you have no experience in real estate, those are the best places to go and get some experience.
Well, I would challenge you to, yes, go and talk to people. I mean,
well, sure, yeah.
my second visit, I went in February to Detroit again and attended a meetup out there with over 100 people there, and I think I have 40 cards.
Let me
from those 100 people.
Josh, what's a great meetup that they can go to if they're in Southern California once all this COVID stuff is done?
let me look up the long title. It's the what is it? The Valley StartupREI. I don't remember. Oh, my camera killed. Hold on, I'm coming back. It's the Valley StartupREI meetup.
We'll put it
find
in
us on meetup.com. You can look me up. It's the longest title. If you're in the San Fernando Valley, once we are released back into the wild, we meet down in Sherman Oaks, and we're there every other Wednesday at this time. This is our normal meetup time. You can come and you can meet Victor, you can meet Kevin, you can even meet me. So we'd love to have you guys come out when lockdown opens up, and we can, be friendly. Bring your cards.
And Josh, what's a good book that people can start reading that's going to help them develop relationships with other people?
So there's a lot.
What's a good starter book? Like, it's an old book, but it's a good one.
Is it the one you don't like?
Is this called Leading?
No.
I can give you like 10 books.
Just name one off the top of your head.
Think and Grow Rich. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's the one I was.
That's the one? Okay.
Well, it's about. I haven't read it personally. It's about relationships, and it's about relationship
building. It's a phenomenal book, by the way.
There you go, Steven. Good call. All right, let's. That was an awesome segue. Let's go back to. We talked about so much.
I'd like to touch more on just out-of-state investing. I think that's part of also why this episode's kind of focused on is out-of-state stuff. So you mentioned David Green, and he has a book. I'll share my screen real quick for the people on video. You can actually see, is it this one here? Yeah. So this is the David Green book. It's a long title. It's Long Distance Real Estate Investing Out of State Rental Properties, or whatever, it's long. But this is the David Green book. Highly recommend it. I've read it. I know Kevin has read it, and I think you read it too, right, Victor?
I've read it multiple times.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I still have room to expand my meetup name, and I can go along.
How many characters are allowed? But so I know a principle in that book, and you also kind of mentioned it as well. You kind of want to get your core four. So can you kind of, what are the core four, and kind of how did you figure out how you got your team assembled out in Detroit?
So the core four is actually the real estate agent, the property manager, the contractor, and the lender. But there are many more than the core four that you need to have. Sure. Those are the first ones identified. And I also realized after doing a lot of the calls that one agent isn't necessarily going to meet our needs. And so I had looked at wholesalers as well as having an agent that I could trust. And the agents turned out to be the one that I found through Chen, too, by the way. This agent has turned out to be one of the best partners I could have ever thought of being with.
Cool.
That's amazing.
Then I got probably maybe 5 wholesalers. I'm not just on their email list. I actually have conversations with them. Well, not during COVID much, but previous to COVID, I would talk to them at least twice a month.
What makes this agent so highly, memorable?
So he's by visiting and learning, I found his energy level. I saw properties he was doing himself. He invests the same way I do.
Okay.
Which was a big thing. I was looking for people who were doing the same thing, they are investing in their own town. He's been there for years. The other nice thing that was actually a criteria that on my list of a go or no go is that he doesn't send me garbage leads.
Okay.
If he sends me a lead, it's within a very specific criteria that I identify.
You identified. So
Yes.
in the beginning, was he was probably sending you everything, or was this kind of,
Yes. Yeah,
hey,
he
look,
was.
agent, it's going to be, this is what I want.
So here's another really good point for anyone starting it on their own. I thought I had to have the strategy, the exact criteria, the neighborhood. I had to have all this stuff nailed before I did anything. The reverse is true. By me doing investing, or by me doing the conversations with potential members, I learned what's working in that specific area best, what neighborhoods are there, by having good conversations, and frankly, by doing 5 to 10 analyses a day off of the marketplace, off of Redfin, off of Zillow, off of other things, what the wholesalers send out. By doing all that, I was able to take what I thought I could do and refine it down to a very narrow, specific. I think I'm now down to 5, 6 neighborhoods only in all of Detroit. Instead of all of Detroit, it's actually just down to a few neighborhoods with a very specific identified criteria. But that came from having the conversations and seeing what's happening and visiting properties and doing, gosh, how many analyses have I done? If I've done, just call it 5 a day for 10 months.
Yeah, for a
Thousands.
Very long time.
Yeah,
We'll just go with thousands.
yeah. It helps. It helped. So when we go back to what should a person do, I don't agree that it's 6 months to a year. I think you can get there in a couple months by taking that approach. Do the analyses, have the conversations, go do a visit, and you'll find what lights you up and what strategy fits your plan, your criteria.
And I want to add, if you're not going to invest out of state, and if you have a local market, or even if you just want to get involved, meetups are great, but go to these open houses. Go to every weekend. Go to an open house. Go driving for dollars. Just drive by neighborhoods and see.
You don't have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you don't have to go far, but it'll accelerate that process of analysis, or it'll accelerate you won't be stuck in analysis paralysis as much. You're constantly thinking, well, what should I do? What's a great strategy here? You'll hear 20 different strategies, if not more. That's probably just the ones that I couldn't barely scratch off the top of my head.
So the caveat I would add is doing all that, but not getting onto 15 different strategies.
Right.
I always stuck with buy and hold. I didn't go over to flip. I didn't go over. In fact, within buy and hold, I forced myself to stick to duplexes to quads, somewhere between 2 and 4 units. I didn't want to do single families. They weren't profitable enough for what I was looking for.
You didn't do shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, so I kept it in a really narrow window. Does that mean I'm never going to do a flip? Probably not. I'm probably looking to do flips right now to get income to do more buy and holds. But it's not my main strategy, and it's not where I spend most of the time. And my goal is to move towards the garden apartments, the 30 to 50 unit garden apartments that are all over the area of Detroit and Michigan, and actually
everywhere.
Yes, southern Michigan, they're all over. And that's the market I want to get to, but I want to get good at, have my people pressure tested, if you will. Mm-hmm. The agents I'm working with, the property managers, the contractors, the title people, I want to get it systematized to the point where it's just so, what did my vision say? It brings me joy. It's not a headache. It's not a nightmare. It's a fun business to run.
And it's wildly profitable.
Well, that's the goal.
Well, as fun as it is, I'm sure there's going to be great milestones in the business. A great question came in, and I want to go back to how enjoyable will it be when, issues happen, right? So The question was, since you started your Spur strategy project in Detroit, are there any adjustments that you've had to make to your original BRRRR plan after your rehab started?
Yes, and they're
Any, sur-
positive. So
any surprises?
yes, yeah. So the bottom line was it was a duplex that was pretty large and had an undeveloped basement. But on closer inspection, when we were out there in February, it was revealed that it has its own entry and exits.
In the basement?
So yeah, in the basement, and plenty of room to develop not a studio, but a full 1-bedroom. Actually, there's enough room to do a 2-bedroom. There aren't enough windows, and the windows are too costly to put in. So it'll be a large 1-bedroom. But the bottom line is it sent the contractor back to the city to get the approval, and he got approval very quickly that we have the parking and the zoning necessary to make that into a triplex. So
That's
we
awesome.
just increased
Cool.
increased the rent potential there by $650 to $750 a month. And the investment to get there will be less than 10 grand.
How I think we're gonna have another episode with you, Kevin, and probably just talk about deals. It'll be like a short, quicker, like a 20 to 30 minutes.
I'm gonna dig on his negotiation tactics because I know this guy's got some negotiation skills.
Yeah, we'll do the negotiation of how that all happened, and then we'll also talk about a deal. We'll have it in writing, because when we did it at the meetup, we had 17, 18 people show up.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty fantastic when we talked about a deal. How has COVID impacted your project?
So the wonderful governor of Michigan decided that it was essential that contractors can go into a home where there are people living there, and that was safe, but a contractor could not go into an empty home, which my property is empty.
That makes sense.
So my rehab had to stop. So couldn't get a rib. And the other issue was the lender, all lenders stopped in the first part of March lending on investment loans.
Yeah.
So the buy and the rehab loan, while I was approved and everything was set up and done, was ready to fund, the week it was ready to fund, they stopped all funding. So I'm going to have to self-fund the rehab.
Okay.
So good news though is that the rehab should be able to start. I'm being told as of today, should be able to start in the next week, at the most 2 weeks.
Great. That's great news. How many units do you have, Kevin? That's another question.
So this will be that'll make 4.
4 units.
Yeah. So I have 1 in Huntington Beach and now 3 in Detroit. I'm
Awesome.
just beginning.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this is about. We get,
as we all are, or most of us are.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we'll get people on the show that are not investors. That's kind of the whole purpose of this, is it's going to be bringing on people that have extensive real estate knowledge, but also have contractors, framers, electricians, plumbers, every aspect of real estate law, real estate, whatever the case may be, and investors, so we can kind of learn from so many different, angles.
Yeah. And that's frankly the area I have no experience or expertise in it. And that's the contracting, rehab side of it. And that's the area that's scared me the most. And if there's a single reason that slowed me down, that was it.
Okay. What have you done to fight that? Just simply finding a good property manager that has good contractor contacts?
Well, it goes back to, what that information that was not in the David Green book. Is you have multiple people that you can trust together that are not associated. So there are 2 inspectors in Detroit that are not associated with the contractors. And there's a realtor actually, and there's 2 realtors that I can work with that can go and check on what's going on and be my eyes while on the ground for little to no money, just by doing it.
Cool. Yeah, very important. You can have multiple core 4s. You can have a core 8. of course, 12, 16, whatever, but
Core 4 just sounds cooler. I think that's why they went with Core
it
4.
rhymes, core 40,
Rhymes.
core 44. Okay. I'm going to have 11 different core teams out there.
Go for it.
I know this answer, but do you plan to change anything in your budget, Kevin? What, like higher percentages set for vacancy or CapEx?
So that's part of what I was saying is you don't need to have the actual strategy mapped out in advance. You can have your gut feel for it. You can take what, Brandon Turner puts out in his podcasts and his trainings and all that. And then you get actually on the ground and you learn about the area there. And I actually learned a lot of it from that meetup group that I went to with over the 100 people there, just talking to some people around me and having some conversations. And then the agent that I'm working with, and he does the same kind of investing himself, as well as a property manager I'm working with, he does the same kind of investing that I do too. They have the ways they run their budgets, and I took their advice and changed my budgets. So originally I was looking at, certain percentages for repairs, maintenance, property management, and
The 4, the 8%.
yeah, and I readjusted that. So it's I'm much more conservative now than I was, and I thought I was being conservative anyway.
Yeah.
But it's, in my view, it's better to go into a deal, and let's say for me in a duplex, it's got to be $400 a month cash flow, or it doesn't make sense. And that $400 is after all the contingency accounts. Well, my contingency accounts are totally, Hopeville instead of Realityville, then it's not going to be a $400 a month. I have one thing happen, like I just had my water heater replaced today at my own house. That's, a month's, it was $1,500. There goes, 3-4 months of profit.
Yeah. And if you don't have that CapEx put in, then ouch.
You're out. Yeah. So I'd rather be on the conservative side than the other.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the percentages for vacancy and CapEx and all that, they did get adjusted the more information I've gotten.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, a book can tell you so much. It's like any book, business book, marketing book, real estate book, finance book. When you actually do it is where you're going to learn the most, knowledge.
Well, the other thing you learn by doing those analyses is, for instance,
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, in Cleveland in particular, this is a better example than Detroit, although it did show up a couple of times in Detroit. Some of the things you don't know unless you get down into that fine granular detail is you don't realize there's a different tax rate by the different zip codes you're in some cities. And in Cleveland, it can be the difference between $200 a month or $2,000 a month. On a $60,000 property in Cleveland, you can pay as much as $8,000 a year in taxes.
Jeez.
If you're in the wrong zip code.
If you're in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah. And I learned some of that from the very first meetup I went to, your very first meetup. You had a guy there that had bought a place in Cleveland, and he had not thought that he thought he was going to be able to pass the water bill on to his tenants.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Well, I also learned about that. Cleveland has this nice little deal. They pass on any of their bond issues to the landlord. It's illegal for a landlord in a multi-unit, which is 2 units or more. It's illegal for the landlord to pass the water bill on to the tenant, because the property bill, the ballot measures are put into that property tax bill.
If I recall, I think he was more of a single family investor, so he probably could have passed that off. But in either case, that's interesting that you remember that.
Yeah, well, that taught me to start asking questions in Cleveland.
Learning some interesting things.
What it means for me in Cleveland is there's certain zip codes I don't do business in. I don't even analyze, because their water bills or their property taxes are exorbitant. $700-800 a month for a water bill for a duplex.
Yeah, that's a make or a break deal.
Yeah.
And if you don't calculate that, then you're underwater, literally.
All the way. So,
no
but
pun intended.
I would have never known that had I not done, several hundred in those areas.
Yeah. Speaking of different zip codes, what other cities are you interested in besides Detroit?
Cleveland.
If you have any. Cleveland?
Yeah. And I'm opening my mind up. I'm starting to think about a couple in the Southeast too.
Okay.
But I really, I want to get good at one area. So
Before moving forward.
Yeah, my 1 to 2 year goal in Detroit is to have 20 doors, and in Cleveland to have 10.
Okay.
My 3 to 5 year goal is to have 100 doors in Detroit, which means I've gotten to a couple of those garden apartments.
Now, are you looking at a piece of paper as you're reading that? So you've written that goal down, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. My goals are in front of me all the time.
Yeah. And of course, those who are not going to be able to see this once we convert this into an audio for a podcast. Yeah, he was looking at his lower right as he was saying that, and I'm thinking, that's a man that knows what he's talking about.
So the answer to Regina's question is yes, they can increase.
What's the question? What's the question, Kevin?
Regina asks, how do property taxes work in Cleveland or Detroit? Can they increase each year by as much as property appreciates, or is there some kind of limit as it exists in California? No, there are no limits like California. And in Detroit, there's actually this very difficult, odd calculation of 3 different arbitrary numbers that are put out by the county and the state and the city. And you're one of those numbers is based on the sale price of the house. The other numbers are based on what its real, its comp value is. And then there's some other number. I have no idea where it comes from. But the bottom line in both areas is your taxes don't change for 2 years. So if you buy a property, it's not next year it changes, it's the year after. So you can go into it thinking, oh, my taxes were $2,000 last year. Well, then 2 years later, they go to $5,000 if you don't do your homework properly. And that's something that you learn to do. It's your realtor will not tell you this, but you learn by asking the questions that I want to get a quote from the county as to what the taxes will be 2 years from now.
I was going to ask, who would you?
Your title company can tell you that.
Okay.
And your realtor, if they're worth any salt, they'll tell you that too.
Cool. Ask questions, right?
Yeah. If you don't ask, you don't know.
You definitely need to have another podcast with Kevin because
we've
got an hour and we're like scratching surface on many topics.
So many topics.
Well, so the takeaway from this is
go for it. I was going to ask you the
takeaway is there is analysis paralysis, but don't let these things stop you from moving forward. The key for me was to find people I could trust. And in finding people I could trust, I learned these things. And this realtor and the title person that I've been working with, they both won't let me do a deal unless I have my eyes open to this information. But that came from me having a relationship with them.
Yep. Pay attention, people. That was a really good point. If you need to, like Brent, if you need to rewind on your thing, go back 2 minutes to hear that again because
hit the 30-second back.
Yeah. Kevin, what book are you reading right now? And if you're not reading a book, what book would you recommend? And it doesn't have to be real estate related.
Miracle Mornings for Millionaires.
It's a good book. Well, I read not the Millionaires one, but I read the original one, and it is a good book. So I highly agree.
I was going to say Miracle Morning is now like a brand, right?
Yeah, Hal Elrod is made it into, there's like 5 different versions. I chose the Miracle Mornings for Millionaires because the co-author of it happens to be one of the founders of the men's networking group I'm part of called GoBundance.
Okay.
Which we will go in on the next podcast because I want to talk about GoBundance.
Or maybe the third one. This is great stuff. Josh, you never asked me what book I'm reading.
I know what book you're reading.
No, you don't. Actually, I picked up a completely different book, and I have not put it down.
It was the Witcher series.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Victor.
Yes.
What book you're reading? And if you're not reading a book, what would you recommend? Doesn't have to be real estate related.
This is not real estate related. This is an incredible book that I have not had a chance to put down because Even my 25-minute commute, which I usually just listen to music when it's that short, I turn it on. I can't wait to listen to this book. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And the author,
Oh, that's a good title.
what a book. Every passage is a quote. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday is the author. It's an audiobook, hardcover book, all the things. I forgot where I heard it. Oh, I think it was in like my Audible suggestions. And I know Tim Ferriss recommended it at one point. And it's very stoic, but oh wow, what a fantastic book.
Well, Josh, what book are you reading right now?
Oh, hey, Josh, what book are you reading?
So I normally don't do audiobooks, but I'm going to highly recommend that if you want to listen to one, David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, listen to the audio version because they kind of talk in between chapters with David about his upbringing and stuff like that. And the dude's very loose with his language, but he is a very strong inspiration. So it's Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. You can read the hard copy, but I recommend listening to the Audible version because there's a lot of insight that he gives between chapters, which I think is great.
It's like, is it read by the author?
It's not. Well, it's read by his not ghostwriter, but the guy who wrote it for him. But he like will stop and then he'll ask him a question like he's in the room with him, which I believe he is. So cool. It's phenomenal. It's a good book and it's very engaging too.
An interview while reading the book of the author. It's people coming up with some cool ideas.
Yeah.
And David Goggins is quite the inspiration. I'm not gonna, no spoilers, but
it'll be my next book.
Yeah.
So we're going to be wrapping this up. Thank you, Kevin. I had one final question for you, sir. You already mentioned it, but maybe it's something that's not real estate related. What are some goals for you for the next foreseeable future?
Well, I mentioned the real estate goals. I also have a voiceover business I'm building. I'm still working on that, getting better on my skills.
Yeah. Is that your microphone and behind you?
Yeah, it's my little recording area. Yeah.
Cool. I like the soundproofed walls.
Yeah. So my goal is to have that producing a good, healthy, six-figure income that's not hard to achieve from that little studio right there.
Awesome.
Soon. And then
you have the voice for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, other than that, I've got quite a few other goals. Most of them are health and family related, but business wise, I shared with you the 1 to 2 year, the 3 to 5. The main goal I have in that I'm focusing everything towards is that somewhere around year 5 that I'm doing my first syndication as a general partner.
Okay.
And my goal is to do it in 100-unit multifamily. Now that may happen sooner, depending on what the economic situation's like and the learning curve. Mm-hmm. I mentioned GoBundance. GoBundance has helped me understand that it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be a syndicator. And the skills that I've learned already are exactly the skills to develop towards that. So getting good at what I'm doing in Detroit, what I plan on doing in Cleveland. If I can hit the 100 units in Detroit, 20 units in Cleveland in the next 3 to 5 years, syndicating above that will be no problem.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you for sharing that. Excellent, Kevin. All right, everybody, let's wrap this up. This is, again, episode 2 of the Bigger Pockets podcast, interview recording style episode.
Our sponsor today is our Instagram account. You can find us on Instagram.
That was awesome.
StartupREI.
It is Startup_REI. You will only see me because Victor doesn't record on there, but I haven't done it quite a lot lately, but picking it up again. I do kind of little segments of just what I'm thinking about, or maybe little real estate tips and tricks here and there. So come follow that Startup_REI. You can also find my personal one. I do kind of similar stuff, a little bit more personal things on that one. But yeah, that's our sponsor, startup_REI on Instagram. We also have a Facebook, but that one hasn't really moved much, but that's in the works as well.
Who knew juggling so many things would be this difficult?
Well, there's a book called The One Thing that would
that I
disagree
bought
with you.
that I bought that book too. I'm gonna be reading that next. Maybe it's that's gonna give me some pointers. We'll see.
It will. I stopped reading because I realized I'm breaking every single rule that he's giving you. So I felt like I was being sacrilegious by continuing to read the book, even though it's right and I'm wrong. That's really what it boils down to.
No, it's you're right and the book is wrong, Josh. Come on.
No, definitely not. But anyways, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you guys for asking your questions. We appreciate all of you. We are a fledgling little podcast still, but hopefully we have great potential, great things in the future. And we love to see that you guys will come back for our next one. So stay tuned. We'll be on Meetup. We'll be on Bigger Pockets, and we'll let you know what it's going to be. Victor, I will talk to you in a second. Kevin, if people wanted to reach out to you, they can find you on Bigger Pockets. Is that correct?
Bigger Pockets, Facebook, StartupREI Meetup. You can message inside of there.
And his phone number is 80. Just kidding. Yeah. We won't do that.
Yeah. So thanks, Josh. Thanks for that. Thanks for the shout outs to our sponsor. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye, everybody.